The diamond hall at the Oakwood Hotel was alive with twinkling lights as each chandelier scattered colorful prisms across the room filled with well-dressed guests. I watched from a shadowy corner near the entrance, observing the festivities unfold as if it were a grand play. My sister, Tiffany, glided among the guests in her designer wedding dress, gracefully accepting congratulations. Close behind her, our parents, Bobby and Denise Miller, beamed with pride, a joy they never seemed to have for me. "Please sign here, Miss Johnson," the wedding coordinator whispered to me, handing over a tablet for the final payment. I hid a smile under my assumed name, the name I'd used to secretly buy the Oakwood Hotel chain 4 years earlier. Little did they know Betty Johnson, the elusive hotel magnate, was actually me, Betty Miller, the daughter they had declared dead 8 years ago. I signed the tablet and returned it, adjusting the elegant mask covering the top half of my face. The masquerade theme, Tiffany's idea, unknowingly helped conceal my true identity even from our parents. The ceremony was beautiful, I told the coordinator, putting on a slight Spanish accent that I had adopted for my persona of Betty Johnson. She smiled at the compliment, unaware of who I really was. "Thank you, Miss Johnson. We're honored you're here to oversee the Miller wedding. They're a prominent New York family, you know." I was well aware. The Millers' shipping empire dates back to the 1900s. To my parents, maintaining this legacy of success was paramount, even if it meant disowning their daughter for rejecting an arranged marriage to a rival business heir. At 25, freshly graduated and full of modern business ideas, I argued against outdated traditions like arranged marriages. The fallout was severe. My father's fury, my mother's cold disappointment, and finally, an ultimatum. Marry the chosen suitor or be cut off. I chose freedom, secretly drained my trust fund, and vanished. Initially, I survived in a cheap motel, immersing myself in modern business strategies and digital innovations. I reinvented myself, adopting a new look and accent, creating Betty Johnson from nothing. Meanwhile, my parents concocted a dramatic narrative for my absence. They told everyone I had died in a sailing accident, even staging a funeral with an empty casket. 8 months later, I discovered my death when an email to my sister bounced back, revealing through her social media the lie. That was the moment Betty Miller truly died, and Betty Johnson took full form. "Miss Johnson, would you like to be seated for dinner?" The coordinator interrupted my thoughts. I nodded and followed her to a table strategically placed to keep me involved yet unnoticed. The irony of funding my sister's wedding while owning the mansion my parents lived in wasn't lost on me. Over the years, I had discreetly acquired every property and business my family frequented or partnered with. They were just unaware of it. Suddenly, my father's voice boomed across the room, gathering everyone's attention for a toast. "Today, we celebrate the marriage of my only daughter, Tiffany," he proclaimed, the words striking me sharply. Despite everything, the sting of being erased from my family remained. "It was a day filled with mixed emotions," he said, his voice laden with emotion. "I couldn't help but remember our dear Betty, Tiffany's sister, who passed away too soon. She would have cherished being here today." Beside him, my mother wiped her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the epitome of a grieving mother missing her daughter. Little did they know, that lost child was just 45 feet away, wielding more power and wealth than the Miller family had gathered in 5 generations. A server offered me champagne, and I took a moment to compose myself. I hadn't come for vengeance, or so I told myself. I had built my empire on real innovation, turning underperforming businesses into industry leaders. It just so happened that I now controlled most of my family's enterprises, a convenient outcome. "Such a pity about their older daughter," an elderly woman next to me murmured, eager to share rumors with the enigmatic hotel owner. "Poor girl died in a boating accident, they say. She was quite rebellious and even refused an excellent marriage proposal. Some even say she might have done it intentionally," she hinted vaguely. As people speculated about my suicide, it fit their narrative better than the truth, that I had chosen freedom over their oppressive control. Tiffany stood to speak, her husband glowing beside her. My sister had blossomed into a beautiful woman, her elegance reminiscent of our mother. "Thank you for being here," she started, her voice polished from years of elite schooling. "Today is nearly perfect, but we miss my sister, Betty," she continued, pausing dramatically. Betty was not just my big sister. She was my guardian, my idol. She always said that anything is possible if you're brave enough to chase your dreams. I just wish, she paused again, I just wish she could see that I've finally found mine. The crowd responded with murmurs of sympathy. I had to stop myself from laughing. Tiffany was 14 when I left, old enough to know exactly what our parents had done. Yet, she had eagerly embraced the role of the perfect daughter, never even bothering to warn me about the staged story of my demise. As dinner began, I observed the main table. My parents, Tiffany, her husband, and his wealthy relatives looked like they belonged in a high society magazine, flawlessly styled, utterly poised, but utterly fake. A decade ago, their facade had overwhelmed me. Now, I saw them for what they were. Trivial people clinging to obsolete power, oblivious to the changing world. The shipping industry they had once dominated was evolving, and they hadn't kept up. Their empire was falling apart, secretly sustained only by the covert investments I had made through anonymous corporations. Miss Johnson, a man in a costly suit, approached my table, recognized as Matthew Taylor, my almost father-in-law. He looked significantly older. "I hope you're enjoying the evening," he said. "We were both surprised and honored to hear you'd be attending." I smiled discreetly behind my mask. "I make it a point to attend special events at my top hotels, Mr. Taylor, especially when it involves such esteemed families," I told him. He seemed pleased by the flattery. "Yes, the Millers have been a cornerstone of New York society for generations, though I must admit, recent years have been tough." I remained politely silent, fully aware of the challenges he mentioned. My firms had gradually taken over controlling stakes in their key shipping routes, modernized the operations, and tightened their profit margins. "The industry isn't what it used to be," he sighed deeply. "These tech startups and modern logistics companies are turning everything upside down. Just last month, we lost our biggest client to a newcomer called Dragon Shipping." I managed to keep my expression neutral. Dragon Shipping, one of my earliest acquisitions, turned from a struggling local shipper into a leading digital logistics empire. "Progress can be tough to handle," I said diplomatically. "Progress," he scoffed. "In my day, business was about relationships, about family ties. Did you know my son was supposed to marry Bobby Miller's elder daughter? That would have been a merger to celebrate. But she had other plans," he sighed. "Tragic, really, what happened to her. Maybe for the best, given her defiant nature." I clenched my champagne flute a little tighter. Before I could reply, a disturbance at the main table caught everyone's attention. My mother had stood up, slightly unsteady, clearly having enjoyed the champagne a bit too much. "I just have to say," she announced, her speech marked by a drunk's exaggerated clarity, "how wonderful it is to see all our dear friends here today, especially those who stood by us after we lost our Elena." I sat frozen, watching the spectacle unfold. "Such a hard time," she continued, dabbing her eyes, "having to tell everyone about our daughter, the shame of it all. But we preserved the family name, didn't we, Bobby? We gave her a proper farewell, even though she didn't deserve it." "Margaret," my father's voice sliced through her ramblings sharply, "perhaps you should sit down." But the champagne had stripped away her usual poise. "Oh, but darling, I must tell Miss Johnson what an honor it is to have her here. Such a successful woman, and self-made at that. Nothing at all like our poor Betty, who thought she could ignore her family duties and succeed alone." She laughed harshly, the sound as brittle as breaking glass. "As if a Miller could ever make it without family help. She didn't even last a month before." "That's enough," my father interrupted, standing abruptly, his face red with embarrassment. "Margaret, you're causing a scene?" The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on my mother's meltdown with shocked fascination. Tiffany was covering her face, her new husband awkwardly patting her shoulder. I rose slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor, drawing my mother's gaze to me. "Miss Johnson," she called out, her drunk focus unnerving, You simply must share your secret. How does a woman with no family name and no connections build such an empire? Betty thought she could do the same, though she was smarter than generations of Miller business acumen, and now she's... What, mother? The words slipped out, my accent revealing itself. For a moment, recognition flickered across her face, though it seemed impossible. She blinked, looking confused by the question from a stranger. My father reached her side, taking her arm firmly. I apologize for my wife, he said smoothly, the veneer of control back in place. The excitement of the day combined with the memories. Please, everyone, continue to enjoy your dinner. He led her away, likely to a quiet room to sleep off the champagne in a hotel I owned, just like the mansion they still lived in and the companies they no longer controlled. I resettled in my chair, a little shaken, nearly exposing my true identity wasn't part of the plan, yet here I was, letting old grudges nearly ruin years of strategy. The elderly woman next to me offered a comforting pat, saying, "Don't mind them, dear. Old money, like the Miller struggles with change. The world today is for the self-made, the innovators like you. Heard your hotel chain is moving into shipping too." Something like that, I murmured, regaining my composure. Little did she know, my hotels were just the facade. I controlled a billion-dollar empire aimed at dismantling the Millers' legacy. Dinner passed with trivial chatter. My father smoothed things over with guests. My mother was absent, all of them relics of a fading era. When the wedding planner asked if I'd stay overnight, I declined. "I've seen enough family drama," I said, handing her a thick envelope for my sister, a wedding gift she'd never trace back to me. "Make sure they have everything they need, and send some aspirin to Mrs. Miller's room for the morning." Leaving the ballroom, my father raised a toast to the family. Ironic, given they'd erased their daughter, Betty Miller, but Betty Johnson was very much alive and just beginning. In my car, I instructed my assistant Kayla over the phone. Execute Phase 4. It's time the Millers found out who they're really dealing with. The next morning from my office, watching the antiquated Miller ships, I knew my mother's slip had pushed my plans ahead. Now was the time to act. Kayla updated me. The wedding cost the Millers over $500,000 on credit. Their financial situation is critical. "And the Taylor merger?" I asked. "Like tying 3 stones hoping they'll float," she said. "Send out the rate hikes to their clients," I instructed. "Let's see who sticks around for outdated shipping when modern logistics are cheaper." Kayla nodded, adding, "Your father's called an emergency board meeting for Miller shipping tomorrow." "Perfect," I said, a smirk crossing my face. "Prepare the paperwork." The game was set, and I was ready to make my move. Betty Johnson was about to make a bold entrance at Miller Shipping. Kayla's voice quivered with concern. "Are you sure about this?" I responded quietly. They buried their daughter to save face. Now they'll see the cost. The next day, I dressed meticulously, a blood-red Armani suit that screamed authority, Louboutin heels that echoed sharply on marble, and a small gold compass pendant from my grandmother, the only Miller who had truly cared for me. Miller Shipping's headquarters looked the same as it did a decade ago, the same sturdy granite structure, the same brass nameplate from 1935, and the same portrait of my great-grandfather looking stern in the lobby. But today, there was a palpable tension, whispers, and uneasy glances as people noticed my arrival. "Miss Johnson," the receptionist stammered, caught off guard. "We weren't expecting." "That's because the board meeting is supposed to be private," I interjected, handing her a thick envelope showing my credentials as the majority shareholder of Dragon Shipping and a major creditor of Miller Shipping. She trembled as she checked the documents, her face turning pale as she realized the extent of my control. "Of course," she stuttered, directing me to the 15th floor boardroom. Riding the elevator, I centered myself, listening through a discreet earpiece as Kayla updated me. "All board members are present. Your father is trying to push an emergency restructuring plan. He thinks he can save the company without help." The boardroom doors were imposing, made of heavy oak. I paused outside, hearing familiar voices through the wood. "We can't accept these terms," my father argued. "Dragon Shipping is trying to steal our company piece by piece." We don't have a choice, Bobby, another voice countered. We're losing clients. Our ships are outdated, and this mysterious Betty Johnson owns half the ports we use. I pushed the doors open, and the room fell silent. 12 men in suits stared, taken aback by the sudden interruption. At the head of the table, my father froze, his expression darkening as he recognized me from his daughter's wedding. Miss Johnson, he finally said, his voice strained, this is a private meeting. Not anymore, I replied, striding to the table, my heels echoing in the quiet room. Please, don't let me interrupt. Continue discussing the terms my company has set. Your company, he spat out. Dragon Shipping is just an upstart, using digital tricks to steal clients. Miller Shipping has survived generations. It will survive precisely 10 more days. I interrupted smoothly, placing a folder on the table. Inside were documents detailing my ownership of their assets, evidence of their debts, failed updates, and their desperate attempts to keep up appearances while their empire crumbled. This is impossible, my father murmured, flipping through the pages. These properties, our house, the hotel chain, they all belong to me. They belong to you, I corrected, along with controlling interest in most of your remaining clients' companies. Face it, Mr. Miller, you're not just losing, you've already lost. He slammed the folder down. Who are you? Is some tech billionaire trying to dismantle a legacy business? You have no idea what family tradition means. Family tradition. I removed my sunglasses, meeting his gaze. Like the tradition of forcing your children into loveless marriages? Or declaring them dead when they refuse to comply? His face went pale. No, he whispered in disbelief. It's not possible, Betty. One of the older board members gasped, recognition dawning. I smiled coldly. Betty Johnson, actually. I took the name after you killed me. It's better for business than being the dead daughter of a failing shipping magnate. Chaos erupted in the boardroom as members shouted questions, and my father collapsed back into his chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. As the sound of an emergency alarm echoed through the building, I raised my voice, cutting through the chaos. You have exactly 30 hours to accept the merger proposal. If you refuse, I'll call in all outstanding debts and secure your remaining assets through my subsidiaries. Your choice. I paused at the door, then added, Oh, and father, you might want to check on mother. I hear she's still reeling from her performance at Tiffany's wedding. As I exited, security guards rushed in, likely summoned by my father. I couldn't help but smile. They were employed by me, though they were unaware of it. In the elevator, Kayla's voice crackled through my earpiece. That was quite the scene. They love their theatrics, I replied, having mastered the art from the best. Your mother's in the lobby, Kayla added. I tensed. She arrived about 10 minutes ago and seems to have sobered up from the champagne. The elevator doors opened to reveal Denise Miller, the epitome of New York's high society, standing poised even as her world crumbled. She was near the portrait of my great-grandfather, a spot where I had stood at 20, being lectured about family duty. Miss Johnson, she began, her voice as brittle as thin ice. Or should I say, Betty? Will do, I interrupted, but only in private. Publicly, I'm still very much deceased. Your choice, as I recall. She flinched. We did what we had to, for the family name. The family name? I laughed, the sound reverberating off the marble walls. Look around, Mother. The Miller name isn't worth the brass it's engraved on. The only thing keeping this company afloat is my money, which means it's my name on the line now. You're enjoying this, destroying everything we built, she accused. No. I stepped closer, the familiar scent of her perfume in the air. I'm saving everything you destroyed. The company will survive, modernize, grow, but not under Miller's hands. Her lips trembled. We thought you were dead, poor failed. You thought your rebellious daughter couldn't possibly succeed without your help. That's why you erased me, because the alternative was admitting you might be wrong. A tear streaked down her cheek, cutting through her makeup. Betty, please. We can fix this. Come home. I'm not that naive girl anymore, I stated, walking past her toward the entrance. You have 30 hours to accept the merger. Don't worry, I'll let you keep the house. Consider it a wedding gift to Tiffany. Outside, the summer sun warmed my face, a stark contrast to the chill of the Miller building. I glanced back once to see my mother's silhouette through the glass doors, small and lost. In the car, Kayla reported, Phase 4 complete. The board is in chaos. Our lawyers are ready, and rumors are already spreading. What's our next move? Kayla asked. I checked my phone, buzzing with calls from desperate board members and family friends suddenly realizing who I really was. Let them talk, let them panic. The next 30 hours will determine the fate of everything. We wait, I decided. Then we show them exactly what the dead daughter can do. The 30 hours felt like an eternity. I spent them in my penthouse, overlooking New York Harbor, ignoring pleas and offers as they came in. The media had caught wind, speculating wildly about the supposedly dead heiress turned billionaire CEO. The Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive, Kayla noted, handing me coffee. Not yet, I said, savoring the aroma. Let them speculate. The real story will unfold after the board's decision. And if they refuse the merger? I smiled at the thought. They wouldn't dare. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from the board's secretary. The vote was unanimous. They accepted the merger terms. Even my father hadn't opposed it. Set up the press conference, I instructed Kayla. 3 hours, main lobby of Miller Shipping. Tell them Betty Johnson will be making a major announcement. As I touched the compass pendant at my neck, a reminder of my grandmother, I prepared to step back into the world not just as Betty Johnson, but as Betty Miller reborn. The lobby was crowded when I arrived. Reporters and Miller Shipping employees were everywhere. My father stood with the board on stage, looking much older. I delayed my entrance by 15 minutes for a bit of satisfaction. Wearing a blue suit that matched the company logo, I stepped forward. Thank you for coming. I started at the podium. I'm Betty Johnson, or as some of you know, Betty Miller. The crowd went silent, then erupted with questions. I left 8 years ago to avoid an arranged marriage, not because of a sailing accident as my family claimed. They pretended I was dead rather than admit I left, I explained. As I announced the merger of Miller Shipping with my company, Dragon Shipping, security stopped my father from interrupting. We're transforming the company. The old ways and old board are out, I declared. Questions flew from reporters as Tiffany, looking stunned, pushed through the crowd to the stage. You were at my wedding watching us? She asked quietly. Yes, I replied, acknowledging her presence and our past. It's time for a change, whether the old guard likes it or not. Although young, she was still scared of becoming someone like me. A tear rolled down her cheek. I miss you. The real you, not the version they talk about at parties. For the first time, I felt my guard falter. I missed you too, but I couldn't be who they wanted. I had to be true to myself. Suddenly, a reporter called out, breaking the moment. What's next for the Miller family? Turning back to the crowd, my professional mask was back on. They'll keep their personal assets, the ones not already legally mine, and they'll be fairly compensated for their shares. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to rescue a company and family ties that lost their way. I glanced at my father, defeated on his stage, and my mother, silently crying in the audience. Tiffany was torn between the sister she lost and the parent she chose. Some things, I said softly, can't be fixed with money or business deals. The Millers disowned their daughter rather than accept her choices. That kind of rejection doesn't just vanish because she returned successfully. The press conference wound down. Reporters got their quotes, photographers their shots of the triumphant return, and the crowd slowly left. I remained on stage, watching my parents consult with their lawyers while Tiffany lingered, unsure. Kayla came up to me. The papers are ready to be signed in a private room. I nodded. Give me a minute. When the lobby had nearly emptied, I approached my parents. Up close, they looked worn and frail, nothing like the formidable figures of my youth. The lawyers will explain everything, I stated professionally. You'll be comfortable. The house and vacation properties are yours for life. I don't want to leave you destitute, just powerless. My father responded bitterly. Like you were? I smiled coldly. The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. Sign the papers, accept a peaceful retirement, maybe even try to mend our family or fight me, lose it all, and prove that pride is more important than family. My mother reached out and took my hand, her expensive rings pressing into my skin. We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. The business world is tough for women. I pulled my hand back. I know how tough it is. I succeeded not because of the Miller name, but because you forced me to make it on my own. Tiffany stepped forward. Betty, what about me? You're my sister, I said simply. My door is always open to you when you're ready to see me as I am, not as they wish me to be. As I turned to leave, I paused. Oh, and Mother, next time you're drunk at a party in my hotel, try not to boast about how you erased your daughter. It's bad for both our reputations. The paperwork took less than an hour. Signatures were exchanged, hands shook, and just like that, Miller Shipping was under new management. The company would retain its name, but everything else would change. New board, new approaches, a new future. That night, in my office, I watched the ships in the harbor, soon to bear the Dragon Shipping logo, updated with the latest technology and integrated into my larger transportation network. The Miller legacy would live on, just not as my parents envisioned. Kayla brought a bottle of champagne. To the merger, she said. To the truth, I corrected, raising my glass. Sometimes, it takes a figurative death to breathe new life. Your sister's been calling, Kayla mentioned cautiously, and your grandmother's compass? I touched the pendant. Grandma knew. She left me this compass the day before I disappeared, reminding me that the right path isn't always the easy one. She would have loved to see this. I mused, sipping the champagne. She always said our family pride would sink us faster than any storm. My phone buzzed again. It was Tiffany. Can we talk? She asked softly. Talk, just us? I gazed out at the harbor, where the Miller ships lay shrouded in darkness. Come over, it's time you saw who your sister really is, I said before hanging up. I asked Kayla to order dinner for two. It was going to be a long night. Tonight was about bridging the gap between the sister thought lost and the woman who emerged from those very ashes. Perhaps, just perhaps, something good might surface from all this. I was no longer Betty Miller. The girl they claimed had perished, but Betty Johnson, stronger, wildly successful, and finally, truly free. The merger would rescue their company and the money would maintain their lifestyle. But the truth? That was going to save me. This wasn't about settling scores or chasing fortune. It was about a girl who had to let go of who she was to discover who she could be. I lifted my glass toward the silent harbor. Farewell, Betty Miller, I said softly. Your story ends here, but mine is just beginning. Then I turned away from the past and stepped forward to meet my sister and whatever future waited beyond the door.